Now you can talk.
All right, we're gonna kind of just do like an intro of everybody that's here, so everybody knows what's going on. Of course, in emergency management planning, when things go south at 20 after 7, you adjust, right? So Vanessa Hone will be doing our presentation and she is unable to be here, so we'll be doing it by Zoom. So we'll just go around the room, tell everybody who you are, what you're associated with, and that way everybody has an introduction to people we don't know. So I'm Jackie Bolster. I am the DES coordinator for Granite County, and I also work public health.
I'm Davey Manelli. I represent Lower Rock Creek.
Lower Rock Creek, what?
Rock Creek in the Granite County.
Rock Creek Protective Association.
Yeah, that's.
Thanks, Scott.
But I mean, it's, not everybody's a part of that, so.
But Daniel comes to our LAPC meetings, he's a pretty active member in that as well. So he knows what's going on.
Oh, Jason White, Town Council, Phillipsburg.
Dwayne Aldrich, Granite County Search and Rescue, Town Council.
John Regay, Phillipsburg Town Council.
Sam, Public Works Director, Town.
And what?
Phillipsburg, sorry. You put me on the spot.
David Ray, Phillipsburg Fire and Phillipsburg Public Works.
Daniel Reddick, Mayor of Phillipsburg. Christian Norris, Eagle Ambulance. Sorry, a bit of a stammer there. I'm the base manager there now, so.
Jen Robinson, I'm the coordinator for Granite County and Tampa.
Clerk, Commissioner, District 1.
Kirsten Brinkley, Montana Healthcare Coalition's Western Region Coordinator.
Jerry Robinson, Granite County Public Health Nurse.
I'm Paul Hooper, I'm a fisheries biologist up here at the Forest Service.
I'm Paul Talon, I'm the manager of the Kirk Hydro.
Gail Lieber, Mayor Drummond.
Justin Harrington, Public Works. German.
Valerie Cartwright, Dispatch, Sheriff's Office. Rating Shepherd, Dispatch, Sheriff's Office.
Scott Donkerson, Sheriff, Coroner, Granite County.
And then we have Billy Koleski, who is the executor to the commissioners. And we have Jamie Bancroft. She is with the Drummond or Phillipsburg Ambulance, sorry, and also works at GCMC. And then this is our lovely Vanessa, who will be doing our presentation today. Yes. Well, yeah, let me see if I can turn you up, Vanessa. This is as loud as this will go. That's as loud as I can go. I don't know. Do you want to do a sound check?
Sure, yeah, how's this?
It's a little better. Is there a volume on this one?
External speakers laying around?
No. Okay. Okay. I guess we'll just have to be quiet and listen. Or if you guys want to move closer to here.
Good, we can hear.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Vanessa, if you're ready.
Sure, I'm ready. So you guys can see the screen. It's a cover page of the presentation.
Yes.
Okay. Well, again, guys, I'm so sorry for not making it there in person. I was en route and then realized I was going to be terribly late with the road conditions. I just figured I didn't want to waste anyone's time, so I thought this would be the best option. So thank you all for being super understanding. And again, I hope this is okay. I'm going to try and make it super interactive. So anyone in the room, if you have questions, feel free to just kind of chime in or have Jackie tell me to stop talking for a second, and I'll stop for a second. So please feel free to speak up at any time, or if it's easier at the end, we can always do a Q&A. Okay, so with that being said, we're all here for a tabletop exercise. And I'll just get into it. Okay, so thank you, Jackie. appreciating that introduction. That's my first item on the agenda, so, oops, sorry. So hopefully everyone knows each other in the room, or if they didn't already, now they do. It's great to see so many folks from different organizations. So again, I really appreciate everyone showing up. We will go over the dam itself and the physical characteristics just to get everyone familiar with it. If you haven't, you may or may not be familiar with the dam, so we'll go through that. We'll talk about the failure inundation mapping, which is basically if the dam were to break, what type of flooding would we see and how fast would it occur? When we're talking about a dam breach, time is of the essence, as you know. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll talk about potential failure modes, and these are going to be specific to Flint Creek Dam. So we'll just talk about ones that we should keep our eye on that are specific to Flint Creek Dam. Then we'll jump into the exercise. The exercise is going to isolate just one of those potential failure modes, and we'll just kind of run through a potential scenario while using the EAP. So we're going to see how well the EAP does as far as planning who to call and when. And from this exercise, we can always make edits, but essentially we're just exercising that document and our procedures that are in place. So with that, at the end, we'll talk about strengths, weaknesses, and improvements. So while I'm going through this, if anyone has any comments, feel free to kind of jot them down, and we can present comments either at the end or you can send them directly to me if you think there's anything on the EAP that needs updated. Any questions or clarifications before I go on?
None in the room.
Okay. All right. So again, I'm really sorry I'm not there in person. This is me. I am part of the Great West team. I work a lot with the Helena office, but I'm in the Billings office, which is why I tried to make it there, but couldn't this morning. I did help out with this EAP that is updated. So in 2019, I think it was just before the new year, we updated it according to some FERC requirements. And then I also hosted the virtual tabletop for Fred and Burr Lake Dam. If anyone was not, I know there's a few people in the room that were there. So hopefully you guys learned a lot from that. And it'll be a lot of the similar concepts that we're going through today. Okay, so jumping into our dam here, it is owned and operated by Granite County. It was built in 1901. It is a high hazard dam classification. And primary purposes at the moment are hydropower, also recreation, and irrigation. It's a rigid masonry core dam with earth embankments, and it also has a reinforced earth crest section extension. It's roughly 520 feet long. Crest width itself is 11 feet. The height is 55 feet. This is a photo of the upstream face. The reservoir itself is 2,850 acres. The normal pool capacity is 31,000 acre feet. The maximum capacity is 77,500 acre feet. Drainage area 49 square miles. And as you know, inflow is north of Flint Creek. All right, getting into the outlet works, we've got a primary conduit and control. So there's two 30-inch diameter steel pipes. Those were installed in 1901 with the original construction. It's got a new knife gate valves that were installed in 2018. There's a secondary conduit control, which is a 24-inch HDPE with a butterfly valve. Those are photos there to help paint the picture. We've also got a principal spillway. So in the top right, there's a photo of the inlet, which you saw a second ago as well. So the inlet to the spillway is actually a box. It's almost like a box culvert, and then that photo on the bottom is what that box culvert outfalls into. And then at the bottom, there's the stilling basement. So that's the primary spillway for the dam. Capacity is roughly 1,500 CFF. Okay, let's talk about the here. 1 second. I see some folks in the lobby. Give me 1 second.
I'm here on lobby.
Oh,
Where?
okay. All right, sorry about that, guys. Okay, I think we're all good. Okay. So overview of power generation. As I said, it's Flint Creek Hydroelectric. The primary flow line is a 36-inch diameter HDPE, and it generates about 2,000 kilowatts. There's a photo of the powerhouse there. Okay, here's an overview of the dam from like a bird's eye perspective. So all of those components we were just talking about, if you can see my mouse, here is the 24-inch HDPE pipe that we're going to be talking about later. So just kind of note where that is. It's on the right abutment if you were looking downstream on the dam. Here are the two 30-inch steel pipes and timber crib. Here's the spillway that we just looked at in the Stilling Basin. Here's a view. These are from the EAP, by the way, these diagrams. This is looking upstream at the dam. So if you were downstream in the creek, here's that concrete flume, dam itself, and how it works. I think most of you guys know there is a road over the dam with a pedestrian causeway as well. So I think you guys knew that, but just in case you didn't. And that's why that box culvert is there, so it goes underneath the road and then into the spillway. Okay, talking about the history. So as I said, the original construction was in 1901, and it was constructed as a 30-foot high masonry dam. In 1919, it was raised 5 feet with a concrete cap. Then the roadway was constructed with driven piling on upstream fill. 1942, earthen fill placed on the downstream end. In 1967, there was downstream drainage blanket, primary concrete spillway and vault construction. There are photographs there. In 1991, the dam upgrade completed, consisting of raising the dam by 9.5 feet and making spillway modifications to accommodate the probable maximum flow. So that included the box culvert and then raising training walls in the Rockabian Stilling Basin. Continuing on in 2005, this slip line with a 36-inch diameter outlet in the right abutment using a 24-inch HDPE liner and a 24-inch butterfly valve. And that's the photo right here. Oops, sorry. So just a hint, but we'll be talking about this later. In 2012, hydroelectric project was complete. New outlet works to the new large diameter pipe. New turbine and infrastructure was placed in the powerhouse. And then most recently in 2018, we had gate valves replaced and new welded wire gate ends placed on the downstream into the spillway. So this is that Stilling Basin at the bottom of the spillway. And then in 2020, rehabilitation of the upstream dam face and upstream spillway slab. Does anyone want to talk about these most recent repairs before I move on?
No, Vanessa.
Okay. And I just got Ben Singer joined the meeting, so let me let him in. Hi, Ben. Thanks for joining.
Waiting on the other thing.
Sorry, Ben. I tried to get you. Thank you for joining. And understandable about the roads, like I said, I didn't make it out. So Ben, you're in this Teams meeting, and then I'm presenting. And then basically my presentation is and then unmute yourself if you have anything to say. You can chime in.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, thanks so much. So Ben, you can see my presentation as well.
Yes, I can see.
Perfect. Okay. All right, so moving on. So, talk a little bit about the dam history. So, in 2021, there was a dam inspection, and some of the recommendations are listed here on this slide. So, a lot of the repairs were already done, so that's been great. There isn't a ton of work left to do, but they did say, plan to repair the joint between the walls and the floor of the concrete outlet structure. A collection vault should be installed at the spillway tile drain. And so that discharge would allow for measurement of discharge from each drain that incorporates a sediment trap to monitor potential embankment erosion. And then lastly, abandon the upstream timber gate or replace with an operable gate. Okay. So those are just some things that are found in the inspection that they just recommend to fix in the next couple of years. Okay, moving on to inundation mapping. So inundation mapping, as I mentioned earlier, is a mapping tool to assess the risks in the event of a dam breach. So it just maps the risk for downstream residents, roads, let me share that. And that was done, we think, with using a full breach scenario. And then on the maps, it is a depth grid, so it has this color-coded, gridded map, which you'll see here in a second. So with the inundation maps, it's going to tell us where the flooding occurs and at what time, based on the dam breach modeling. So both depth and time is something we'll look at. Here are a couple of the key notes. The campground downstream, the flood arrives in 30 minutes with a depth of 13.4 feet. So just something to note that in the first 30 minutes, you'll have to be prepared for that campground to evacuate or be notified of the dam breach. Down in Phillipsburg, the time to be there is 5.5 hours and 3.3 feet. But we'll look at the maps here and get into that a little bit more in depth. So on the left here, you'll see the dam itself and where the breach analysis begins. So I included some extra boxes just so we can see this better. And I didn't do every single one, but just for a start, right at the dam, the peak flow is 34,000 CFS, and the incremental rise is 47 feet, which is typical. Further down, so at 24 minutes, which is right at that campground, it's 27,700 CFS. On the right image is the first time that it crosses Highway 1. So it crosses at 57 minutes. So that's just something to note for emergency responders, or if we need to block off a road, that we've got 57 minutes. Okay. Further down in Phillipsburg, so this was the time to peak at 5.5 hours, and the flow is 23,000, roughly 24,000 CFS. And some things to note on this image is that, there are some roads in Phillipsburg that are inundated, and according to the depth grid, I would guess it was about 3 to 4 feet. So just something to note there. Any questions or comments while I've got this image up?
There's none in the room, Vanessa.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. So nothing of note here, just more of the inundation data. I'll call it this one on the right screen. So we're 30 miles from the dam, peak flow roughly 23,000 CFS. 6-foot rise. Okay, and then the inundation mapping actually ends here at Drummond, where it joins with Clarksburg. And just for perspective, so we're 37.9 miles from the dam. The flow in Flint Creek from the inundation is 22,000 CFS with a time peak of 15 hours. So there's a decent amount of time there. But just for reference, the 100-year flow in Flint Creek is 5,000. So roughly 5 times the flows from this dam inundation. So there would be significant flooding. So if you think about the 100-year floodplain, it's planned for about 5,000 CFS. We're dealing with 22,000 CFS, almost 40 miles down. Okay, anything before I move on from inundation mapping?
There are none, Vanessa.
Okay, thank you. So these are included in the EAP. They're at the very end of the document. So anyone with the EAP has these maps. And they can be available digital as well, if that would be an easier format. Okay, so moving on to potential failure mode. So talking about how and why dams fail and what we can try and do to better understand how to maintain and prevent these from happening. So each dam has distinct failure modes. For example, an earthen embankment dam is not going to have the same risks that a concrete dam has. So we'll be just talking about specific failure modes to Flint Creek Dam. So potential failure modes are categorized. Category 1 is highlighted potential failure modes. 2 is a potential failure mode considered but not highlighted. Category 3 is more information or analysis are needed. And category 4 is potential failure mode ruled out. So they basically go through each one and decide which ones are pertinent to this particular dam. So based on the 12D inspection, we've got 17 category 2s. So again, that potential failure modes considered but not highlighted, and then 3 category 3s. So I want to talk about 3 different category 2 failure modes. So again, these are ones that are specific to Flint Creek Dam that everyone as part of this group should be aware of. So first one being a plugging of the spillway during flood that could cause overtopping of the dam or erosion of the downstream shell. So if you guys remember the photo of the spillway, the box culvert on the upstream end. So if you had a big flood event with a ton of debris in the lake, it could easily get plugged and then cause the water to rise behind the dam, potentially overtopping and not causing damage to the dam itself. So that's one we'll talk about. Also want to talk about piping along that right abutment outlet. We'll talk about what piping is here in a second. And then, of course, we'll talk about upstream and downstream shell failure under seismic conditions. So in Montana, there is seismic activity, as we all know. So anytime with any type of dam, earthen or concrete, we do have to worry about potential effects from an earthquake. Okay, so this video is showing piping. And I don't know if you can hear that, I might just talk over it, but this is an example of piping. So there's water coming through the dam. It always starts, we call it more like seepage if there's any water on the downstream end of the dam. And then eventually it leads to this. This is like a visual of the side. If you watch, at first it just starts as water going through, and then it picks up material. And you can see it sort of compounding more and more and more material lost, eventually leading to dam failure. Okay, so that is video typing. So talking about the specific dam failure mode, so piping along the right abutment. So what we're talking about is if water were to find a way around that pipe, create a channel and then eventually move material, then we would start to see exactly what was happening in that video. So dam failure from material loss due to piping along the conduit through the dam embankment, initiating at the downstream end. And I'll stop here. Jeremiah, do you want to chime in at all about this particular failure mode?
I think we'll discuss that. I'm obviously a little bit more in this presentation. But even though we have a concrete masonry core, we still have penetrations through that. We have the right abutment conduit, which we're going to discuss further. And then we have the two 30-inch control pipes as well. And that was identified in the latest Part 12D inspection as a potential failure mode. Because we have the concrete masonry core, but then we have these pipe penetrations that have been in place almost 100 years or so, and so there's a potential for seepage between those areas, which could cause loss of material on the downstream face and then further continues to leak, and there's potential separation there. So it is although remote because we have a concrete core. I mean, it is a failure mode.
Yeah, thank you. And good note on, even though we have a concrete core, it's still relevant. Because that photo, the video was obviously so it is slightly different.
This is Scott with the
I
sheriff's
had a couple
office.
folks join the call. If anyone wants to introduce themselves.
Vanessa? Vanessa?
Hi, Maria. Thank you so much for joining. Can you see my presentation? I can, thank you. Perfect.
Hey, Vanessa, this is Jackie.
Meeting over here.
Am I the only one in the room that wanted a little clarification on that? It seems
Yeah.
like that's going on right now.
Yeah, so our Part 12D, we just got back from Dow, and I want to say it's right there on the, I don't know if this is what they're referring to, but right there, there's where the cement was separating on the bottom. Is that what he's talking about? There's two things that need replaced in our Part 12D that were recommended. And I know he's talking about one of them, but I don't know enough about the data.
Is that Jeremiah?
To quote directly. But on my computer, I have the inspection report.
But
it's-
those repairs have been made.
No,
They
these are,
haven't been made. I thought that's what she said, that they haven't done.
no, these are the ones that were just identified.
Do you know
in the
Paul?
Part 12D.
No, there's not.
Okay.
I think the report's only gone to us in Dow and Gray West right now. It just got submitted to work.
Okay. We'll get clarification.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's a good thing we're all here.
You're right.
Shit's gonna get.
Not the shit. The lot. No shit. Is there any other-
You shouldn't said anything. You shouldn't have said anything.
You will.
The files are huge. I would download them.
Hold on.
Do you want to check it or maybe it just be stuffed out? Yeah.
Oh, here, your call was dropped.
It says she's.
Christian words.
There you go. Easier if somebody writes it down.
This.
Hi, we lose you?
Yes, you did.
Sorry.
No problem. Hey, Vanessa, Scott Gunderson would like clarification on,
The seepage below the conduit, you're talking there, like that's going on now? What- Like there's.
I got that.
Yeah, I can hear you, I'm sorry. So to my knowledge, there's not seepage going on now. I'm sorry if that.
Oh,
Seems like that electrician bill here.
okay, I was
Red Burr, I think we had that the ski resort needed notifications because, you know, it overtopped the road over by Discovery. So just as an example, is there anyone else that needs to be notified in this event? That's not on that chart. I'll go back to the chart.
Yeah, Montana Department of Transportation, I don't think is on there. And I think they should be right in with highway patrol. Because we're gonna likely get a quicker response when it comes to maybe closing the highway down out of MDOT than we are in HB. So it's not in there, is it?
No.
Yeah, I'd like to see the Montana Department of Transportation right there with highway patrol dispatch. Somewhere in there. Because we would need their help. I know, like when we have to shut the interstate down or reroute traffic from Drummond, for example, the Department of Transportation is more instrumental in helping us get that accomplished than highway patrol. Highway patrol would be helpful for some roadblocks and stuff like that if we needed them, but. You know, yeah, if they're around. You know, anyway, that's one thing I'd say I'd like to add.
So we have the highway patrol in the red notification chart. So that's the chart during imminent failure. And we have that Jackie would call them. So would it make sense to just add on this yellow notification chart that Jackie calls MDOT, or is there someone better to make that call?
Dispatch communicates with them pretty regularly.
Okay.
You know, you guys think about that.
Well, that makes sense to me. I feel like Jackie might be busy.
Well, we're gonna, if we had an event like this, we would have a dispatcher assigned just to this event and then hopefully another one taking care of all the rest of everything else we deal with. So I think dispatch could contact MDOT. They have them on speed dial anyhow this time of year because of the roads, so. We're gonna get better response closing a highway down with those guys.
Right.
I believe that. I know that's the case, so.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to have dispatch call then. And I think there's an MDT field office in Phillipsburg, is that right?
There's a maintenance, this building, yeah, but there's no, well, there's a section boss here. That phone call wouldn't go to them though. Can you explain what who you guys called them?
I didn't hear.
Marks Department of Transportation. You guys called Rick Skaggs directly?
No, we contact DOT's main office in Helena and they would page him out. That was what they asked of us.
So did you hear that?
Yes, I did. Yep, that makes sense. Yep. Okay, well, I think that makes sense to add to this yellow notification chart just to keep them in the loop, and that way they're ready if we do them. So, good idea. So, any other folks? We talked about the campground, we talked about sirens. I didn't notice anyone else makes sound inundation mapping, but if anyone else makes someone, let us know.
Paul, do you have somebody that we should add?
I just crossed
His home.
number off of me. Is Ben
All
on there?
of it, you have.
Okay, all right, and nobody else on your,
Is Ben on there?
But I'm also going off the.
no, he is not.
I was just thinking out loud here about, that really doesn't need to be in the flow charts for contact though, as far as the fire departments go. We just page them on a separate page for evacuation assistance. What do you think, Julia? So, okay. All right.
All right,
Okay,
moving forward.
moving forward. All right. Next step is emergency action. So we noticed something at the dam. We called an engineer to figure out exactly what situation we're dealing with. We contacted everyone in the notification chart. So the question is, you know, and probably the question that the sheriff would have is, when do you evacuate? So this question is just sort of posed, you know, in a hypothetical situation that would be hard to answer.
Well, it depends on if the engineer tells me that failure's a possibility, I'm gonna evacuate. If that's a possibility, then I'm gonna make the decision to send out that alert.
And Sheriff, how many folks are in that, like, how many residents are we talking about evacuating?
We got the number here.
I think it's like 17
No, it's more than that.
on the chart that I have.
That's the other thing we were gonna bring up is, I'd say maybe 40-ish all the way down to, I'm gonna use landmark references here, like Medish Lane. How far below is that? 2-3 miles?
2.5.
2 to 3 miles below the dam. We might have, I don't know, 20, 40 houses between the dam and there. And that's probably a pretty high number, but I wanted to extend that all the way down to about Black Pine. That's about 2 miles north of Phillipsburg on Highway 1, because just below where that cuts off, there's considerable residences on Flint Creek, just below like Medish Lane there, like 2 or 3 miles downstream. So I think it's something getting ahead of ourselves here that we need to update in that plan as far as go down the stream further with it.
Yeah.
Because did you have a number?
19.
19 homes? There's 19, but that's in the first
Right,
2.5 miles.
right.
So Jeremiah and Vanessa, I suppose we probably need, do you think we need to update the whatever it is you have on the, right now? The flow chart,
So these,
or,
The residents.
The residences affected on along Flint Creek. I don't know, it's just something I was looking at. It looks like it could be further downstream than me, more towards where that
yeah,
water's.
what I've got on the, what I've got on here, if you use my cursor, this is 7 miles from the dam. So if we've got residents only from the
here,
first couple miles, basically anything downstream of here is not in that evacuation. Now, you know, we've got time to peak here at almost 5 hours. So we do have some time, but it does sound like there still may be a need to evacuate even given the time.
Well, when we send out the integrated public alert warning on a yellow plan here, we're gonna encompass the entire Flint Creek bottom, good majority of Granite County probably in that message. So hopefully, everybody downstream gets that, but with my evacuation crews are gonna start from the bottom of the dam and then work our way north along Flint Creek. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I can't see what you got going on up there on the wall, but I was just potentially looking at extending the people that we're gonna make contact with face to face all the way down to about Black Pine. And that's 2 miles north of Phillipsburg. It's just something I noticed in the plan that I didn't necessarily like. I think we should hit some homes along Flint Creek potentially. Because yeah, you're right, we got a little bit of time, but
Well, yeah, and I'm not sure that there are residents listed in the EAP.
there is.
There is 19 of them.
Okay.
Yeah, there is, and I'm thinking of adding to that, I guess is what I'm saying. And I believe I'm going to, so.
and Vanessa, the thing too is we have a lot of homes that have been built in those areas that probably need to be put into this plan also. So Val got a hold of Matt Pierce, who does our maps, and he's gonna send her a updated list, so we'll get that to you guys.
That sounds good, yeah, so to be included in the list, right? Or sorry, to be included in the EAP.
I believe so, yes.
And then we'll make sure that the sheriff has the updated list.
Okay.
But yeah, I think if you've got someone in mapping, that's how I would do it. I would see what homes are in this inundation zone.
And we can supply, we have this inundation, these maps, we have this in GIS. So the county GIS can overlay this and have interactive working maps. When we updated this, the inundation mapping is accurate, based on flow conditions and the topography, but there may be additional homes. I'm sure there is, since we did this in 2017. So it might be good to overlay that and just make sure you have all the latest homes to include it in there for evacuation.
All right, we'll make sure we get that to you.
And I think that was actually an action item for Brad Burr as well. I think the sheriff had requested that actually the homes be added to the maps to help that evacuation process, right? If you knew where, like, maybe there were more homes in different areas, and then you've got the risk mapped on here as well. So I don't know if that would be helpful, but something to consider.
Okay.
It would be helpful. My deputies all have the mapping system in their MDTs, but I'm gonna have 20, 30 firemen in this situation helping me that don't have that information. So we would be assigning an area to Peabody Fire, for example, and say, Dave, I need you and your folks to take care of this 5 mile area or whatever, So it'd be nice for the sheriff's office to have all that, but I guess you guys still have the white rebinders, Dave? Yep, you do. You have an updated one? Yep, okay. So I guess they do have those in their trucks, so. The maps.
Probably a year old, I've got the inserts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, great discussion. Well, when we talk about the update, Jackie, we kind of took that into consideration.
Okay.
So sorry, I skipped back to the maps just because it seems relevant, just kind of looking at who we would need to evacuate. So give me a second as I go back. All right, so we were in step 3, emergency actions. Okay, so this one's a little tough to talk about in depth if we, kind of a case by case basis, but I think the sheriff was spot on in that it all depends on what's happening, which is going to rely a lot on the engineer and maybe someone at the DNRC or even someone at FERC. So we're going to give some feedback on it from a technical standpoint on what needs to happen, and then the sheriff can proceed with evacuation if need be.
And then after that slide's not updated.
The slide is updated?
Still on the inundation maps.
Oh no. Jackie, yours is still on the maps too?
No, ours is on emergency action.
Yeah, it's on step 3.
Okay, just right here. But you know this stuff. Okay, so, and then talking about actions. This is an example contact checklist. So this is actually not in our EAP. We can always add it if need be. This is just a checklist on who was called and when, so depending on the emergency level. So this is just an example, but in our situation, basically it would be, the dam tender called the engineer, and then maybe someone at DNRC, and then the sheriff. So the point of this slide is simply that documentation of those contacts is super important for kind of analyzing this event in retrospect. So this is an example of just a way to document who was called and when. And then this is appendix A1 of the EAP. So this is an emergency event log. So this is more so not who was called, but what happened and what actions were taken. So this is the first appendix in the EAP. So it records information and observations, and it may be hard to think about writing these down amidst the chaos, but it does help us learn from these events, as well as just documentation if needed. Okay, so step 4, emergency actions. be, okay, so this is still step 3, talking about emergency action. So this is if time permits, emergency remedial actions can be considered. Here are some emergency supplies and contact information. So these are just some listed materials and maybe contractors that would be helpful in an event like this. So gravel and concrete in Anaconda. We may need some gravel to fill in any of the piping or seepage or anything at the dam. And some other contacts. So this is in the EAP. I would say we might want to look at this to make sure as well that these folks are still in business and that they're still available to help.
Vanessa, I contacted them all last year, but I will contact them again.
Great. Okay. Yeah. It just as an example, I worked on a dam years ago that had a slump right in the middle of the dam after a big flood event, and the county actually had to build a road in front of the dam in order to address the slump. So think about building a road. That may not be something that you think of with fixing a dam, but the road was needed to bring in the trucks to fix the slump. So just an example of some ideas to put in here so that whoever does have the binder or the EAP can make calls quickly, and they're not, on their phone trying to Google who has gravel.
Hey, Jackie, I know the commissioners have made a request on the quantity and size of materials for stockpile available. I know they were gonna get that list to the road department, but I've never heard, do we have a stockpile of riprap and gravels, available?
I will find that out.
I think the county does. The county has some, I know, but how much at any given time, I couldn't tell you. Because I've seen it stockpiled at the yards.
And that may be for this, we just need to confirm it, because I know the commissioners did request some quantity and size of materials, that we could have readily available, and I don't know where they were gonna stockpile it, if it's just in the shop yard. But it would be good, because in the situation like we're talking about here, where we have some seepage, there is remedial actions we can take place, which Vanessa's gonna go through, that if we do have equipment and materials that we can get quickly, we can, hopefully keep this from progressing to something else.
I have a question as far as drawdown goes, and maybe I missed it, but I didn't see anything in the EAP about, if we're having this kind of situation, are they gonna start drawing the lake down? Like right away?
Yeah, Vanessa's gonna cover that as well, but that's, anytime we have a potential or an imminent failure, there we're worried about loss of life, the dam's gonna go, but when we're in this potential failure, it's gonna be something that I recommend, and the DRC recommends right away, is start drawing down the reservoir just to relieve pressure. So pretty much most of these potential situations, we're gonna start with high flow release.
Okay.
Which I guess doesn't help. I mean, it helps potentially with a failure in the dam, right? But if we're releasing a lot of flow down the creek, we may be in a high flow situation downstream. Maybe roads overtopping. It's not from a dam failure, but we're trying to protect the dam. So it comes with its own issues.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, great question. Okay, so we talked about some folks to contact who can help in these remedial actions. And then, so step 4 here, just kind of closing up our hypothetical situation, would be termination. So this is typically done by the sheriff, and essentially it's just closure of the event. So once anyone who needs to be evacuated is evacuated, and basically when everything is safe. So we would terminate the emergency action plan, you're no longer implementing it, and then you would do follow up and situation reports. Here's an example of the situation report. So I don't know if you guys can see that, it's just more documentation, you know, what the emergency situation at the dam was, what the area affected was, extent of damage, etc.
So Jeremiah, Vanessa, this is Jackie. I have a question. At what point, if we're evacuating and we have a flood, when do we pull in, well, actually, letting Mayor Reddish and Mayor Leeper know, obviously, but when do we pull in, like if we have public health or PEP coordinator or sanitarians?
Isn't that?
I guess I don't have an answer for that. We don't really have them included, and that wasn't something we had. When do you notify your
Isn't that what we
community
contract?
leaders in this situation? Because with even with a failure of like a dam, we don't actually have. We have flooding down through Drummond onto the farm port, but there's not actually an impact to Phillipsburg except for road closures. There's the homes along Flint Creek that would be inundated and need to be evacuated, but
There's infrastructure on Flint Creek, and I'm sure the mayor can speak to that, or Dave. There's infrastructure, the sewer lagoons and everything else
Yeah.
along Flint Creek.
yeah, that's the big one is that the sewer lagoons get impacted. So it is a question, when you can bring in the community leaders as well into this, do we need to notify them in a potential situation? For sure, in an imminent failure of the dam, everybody needs to be notified because that we're losing the dam and so we're gonna have high flow, but do we need to involve them in this situation?
I believe we do.
So
Yeah.
Jeremiah, Jen Robinson, our PEP coordinator, is here.
So to answer that question that Jackie just answered or asked, once the sheriff makes that phone call to the state, I get that phone call within minutes from sheriff making that call to the state. So the sanitation and the PEP coordinator and the public health would be involved within minutes once sheriff makes that phone call.
All right. Okay, there's that answer.
And Jackie, when we do the functional, we have the other, you know, like when you involve the Red Cross and we're gonna have people stranded, we're gonna have homes inundated, and yeah, there's the whole public health side of things that we need to address and deal with also.
All right. Okay.
All right, yep, great question. Okay. Moving on, so I kind of separated this out, so we're out of the hypothetical failure mode, and I just wanted to talk about responding to the emergency conditions and kind of what our options are. So one was already brought up for lowering the reservoir, which is the first one we'll talk about, but these are just actions taken if there's time. So if we're in that yellow or potential failure mode, there may be a situation where, you know, we are trying to save the dam and assess what can we do to prevent the failure. And so that's kind of what these actions speak to. So the first one is lowering the reservoir. So this would be if there's seepage, slope failure, or erosion. So as Jeremiah said, we're trying to relieve the pressure. So we may not know how to fix anything, but we do know that the less water we have behind the dam, the better. So as best we can lower the reservoir if time allows. So here's some of the decisions. So if we're deciding to lower the reservoir, the factors considered should be that time for drawdown. So you have to make sure you have enough time, even, you know, considering the time to implement lowering the reservoir or the, effects on the purpose of the dam, potential for instability of the upstream embankment slope, potential downstream damage due to high discharges. I think that's a big one. And then whether to utilize partial or full drawdown. And then the materials we would need, drawdown can occur from pumps or segments. And if the level cannot be lowered fast enough with these means, controlled breach can be performed, typically as a last resort. which I'm not sure if that's an option on this dam. Jeremiah, can you speak to that? Could we do a controlled breach of any kind, or would we have to rely on a pump?
Sorry, I was on mute. No, we can't do a control breach, but we could pump and siphon. That's actually how we did the work, when they were doing the spillway repairs, is siphoning it over. So that speaks back to the question of how quickly can we get materials, get a contractor in place to start drawdown? Because we are limited on the release of flows. I mean, we do have only two 30-inch gates or conduits that release flow there, plus the spillway. So it's not going to draw down very quickly.
Jeremiah, this is Jackie. Billy was asking that culvert that goes from Silver Lake to Georgetown, that can't be reversed and some of that water is going over to Silver Lake, can it?
Well, I don't believe the pumps are in place to be able to pump it back over there.
Okay.
The infrastructure is there, but I don't know that, I believe the pumps have failed or they're not even in place to be able to pump it back over there.
Okay, all right.
There was discussion years ago about maybe considering something like that again, but nothing has went anywhere with that.
Okay.
Jeremiah, how much water did you lower from the dam when you did the work on the upstream base? And how long did it take, do you know?
Well, I don't know what that was. We were running at about 18 inches below the spillway, but we were still not wanting to draw it too low because of recreational use along the lake. There's concerns with all the residents if we have too much flow or if we have too little stage in the lake. I know the county gets complaints if we have any fluctuation of lake levels there.
Okay, good to know. All right, so any other questions on lowering the reservoir as an emergency response?
None.
Okay, so another thing we can do, and this relates to our piping situation or if you've noticed seepage, is installing a filter. So this helps prevent the dam material from moving along with that flow. So if you remember that video that I showed, as it carried more and more material, if you prevent the material from being released, it just helps to slow down the actual piping. So construction can occur if the site is safe and accessible, is something to be considered. And then it can also be installed around the conduit piping if there's an extension. So here's kind of a photo. This one had a filter and it looks like some gravel in place around the conduit. And Jeremiah, can you speak to, I mean, is this sort of like a Band-Aid on the situation? It's certainly not a long-term fix, but it's a remedial action.
Yeah, it's a remedial action. It depends on the piping situation and what we're dealing with. I mean, it can be a long-term seepage control, but typically, like in our situation, we have piping around that conduit. We've got something further that we need to investigate. So this would be an interim solution until we can do further investigation and come up with a long-term plan. And maybe this would be sufficient because we have a core, masonry core, and we're just trying to protect the embankment. And so a filter blanket like this could be the remedial action.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so this would be on the downstream end. And then the other remedial action for seepage is addressing it at the upstream end. So this is sort of to control the seepage path from the beginning, from the upstream end. And you prevent seepage from the upstream dam and maintenance slopes, typically completed by plugging the entrance with either riprap, sandbags, sheeting, or other fill materials. So often this is done in combination with those, with the filter blanket. So here's an image of what that looks like. So again, this would be if you have access to the upstreams. So you might have to draw the link down. And so I'm not sure that this is super applicable in this case. Here's another image of adding a filter to the downstream edge. So this is, there's internal erosion, and then adding that fill material.
Quick question I just thought of. It used to be just concrete and granite dam or whatever, and they added all the earth behind it. Was it in the 60s you said it was? Do you know,
I believe
does
so.
anybody in the room know why they did that? Was it because there was a problem with that at the time? I wonder.
I wasn't born.
Well, I know that.
Sorry.
What was the problem? Was it just to ensure there wasn't going to be a problem?
It was done in the 60s to add the spillway. They needed to put the spillway, and prior to that, there was actually a road. If you look off the dam on the upstream face, you can see the old timber abutments. That was the old top dam and road segment. And they added a new road across there, put the box culvert in, and they put the actual controlled spillway. And with that, they added the fill. So that was done in the early 60s. So it's kind of an enhancement project.
Okay.
Yeah, great question. Okay, so lastly, and we've kind of done this throughout, so everyone's done a great job of asking excellent questions and great discussion points, but let's talk about the EAP. So we talked about some of the issues. We're going to make updates to that notification chart. We talked about adding homes to the maps in the inundation maps at the end. Anything else?
This is Gail Leeper, Mayor and Drummond. My question with this is as this stuff potentially is happening, who is documenting this? Who's documenting?
That'd be this,
Of all of it?
of all of it, any calls we receive.
Well, I mean, the calls and stuff, but like who's documenting if they have to do something up at the dam? Who is the one that is doing that part of it?
Miss Jackie.
Well, cause I mean, you're not gonna be able to be in all places.
No,
Jackie's not going to be an engineer.
Right.
well,
Would that be the dam tender's job then, just to
Yeah.
keep a record of everything that's happening there?
Well, if you have
The
that.
engineers, who's ever trying to do the fix, would have to document everything they do.
Yeah, I mean, I would try to recommend someone that isn't necessarily on the front lines of this to help document. And to me, it seems like Jackie would be involved with the notifications, and that maybe there would be someone else better equipped to document, but
so,
if Jackie wants to do it.
well, and I'm just kind of like, I'm sitting here thinking, like Fred Borglund, who's our Georgetown fire chief, he would be on that upside. So that would be someone, I mean, and I talked to him the other day, he couldn't be here, but he said, just let me know whatever I could do. Maybe that is someone that on the upside and not on the downside would be able to, be at the dam, document the things and know kind of what's going on, and letting the sheriff's department and everybody on the bottom side kind of know what's up. So that would be a good, maybe someone from Georgetown Fire would be that person. That's a good question.
Certainly would help to have after action report, to have that all congregated and going. Ultimately, that, but we have people on site.
Right.
And then we can congregate all the issues.
But I think having somebody up above, as that person would be a good place. Somebody's not trying to get up the hill. So,
It's gonna be a down tender there.
Maybe.
We gotta
Well,
keep on the lower
hopefully,
side.
yeah.
So he'd be up there too with him.
Potentially, but he's gonna be trying to get up.
Right.
Or he's gonna try to get up there. Is that what you're saying?
Mhm.
I will
Who's
visit.
reporting this? Isn't the damn tender reporting this?
Well, there could be somebody driving down the road too.
Yeah.
I mean, there could be many scenarios on a dam failure.
Mhm.
But I will contact Fred and I,
Isn't he gonna be filling out weekly reports, you said?
Yeah, we get weekly reports from you.
Well, like, what did you
I don't
guys
know if
do?
it's in the dam tenders position description or not, but I think somebody like that, keeping track of, because they're gonna be the first,
Everything's on.
likely
Yeah, cause
The
I'm.
first one to see some of the issues, and they're gonna start the call sequencing, and acting the EAP, they're gonna be talking with the engineers. So them keeping track of correspondence and what's happening might be good for the files. Ultimately, every decision that's made is gonna need to be tracked, especially if we have potential liability or loss of life or something like that. Documentation is going to be key. So all decisions that are made are going to need to be tracked. But I think starting with somebody like the dam tender and keeping track would be good.
so Jeremiah, is there like documentation in that EAP? So he has, all of that would be in there. So he just would have that EAP and start making.
Those tables are in there, right?
Okay.
I did.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, exactly. The first appendix page is that event log. So even if this is a non-failure situation, he could,
God bless him.
on my initial inspection, I saw the dam had X event and then log that. So that form is included, yeah.
Okay, we'll make sure that he knows those things.
Yeah, and if there is, I think that's a great way of making it easier on him to have those forms included. So if there's a form that we don't have, like if you wanted that contact list in the EAP, we could easily add that as an appendix.
I think that contact list, you mean like for gravel and those things, is in the EAP.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, there's that, it's just a contact checklist and it just documented who you called and when,
Okay.
but just something to think about. I think more importantly, the documentation of the actions would be more appropriate. So maybe putting both on it is too much, and just having a document the actual event a log of events would be better. Okay, any other comments or questions about the EAP specifically?
I guess one thing, Jackie, do you need our assistance in doing updates to the EAP? Or do you want us to provide you with our comments? And then how do we want to handle the update? Because I guess we could do this update right now with your EAP document, whatever we decide to put. It might be good to put in there that down the tabletop, there's some items that we need to address, and then do an update to the EAP.
I like that. I think that sounds like a good idea, Jeremiah. Jackie's getting ready to go on vacation, so.
Well deserved.
Yeah, well-deserved vacation, but I think that sounds like a reasonable idea and way to proceed.
So to have them, go ahead, Jeremiah.
I was gonna say, we can do it as well, I just didn't, I mean, if you think you can get it done.
No, I think you guys should do it. I was thinking.
Yeah,
We did the 2020 update, and so if the county provides us with any additional comments, we have our comments with this as well, and we can do the update. And it may take a little bit of time, so we may, that first or second week of January, we can get the EAP and the status update report to FERC. But I don't think that would be a big deal with us doing the tabletops late in the year.
Perfect.
so I can get. Yeah. Do you want me to send notes, or you guys, are you making notes, or do you want me to send you EAP updates on the flow list? Or I'll call people tomorrow and make sure we have the correct numbers.
That sounds good, and we can, Jackie, you and I, and Jeremiah, we have just a quick follow-up, and kind of talk through notes, as well.
Okay.
While we've got the group together, we want to talk about the functional, and maybe just, I don't know how many folks were involved in the last functional exercise. But if there's anyone new, maybe Jeremiah, if you could just kind of speak to it. Okay, 5 folks, okay. That's pretty good.
So, we do have that functional, Jackie. I don't know if we've talked yet about potential schedules or not. So yeah, I think that would be the first thing. Was typically we do them on a weekend, a Saturday, because it's most of the day, and we have people's. Usually they're off work and we have their attention to functional. So we'll need to pick that date sooner than later, and then Great West will help with the development of that functional, but we'll run through a real world scenario with they call them the measles, but with injects and sequences, and a lot of the folks that, because we've been established that before, but we'll actually do the IPAWS call downs and everything just to test all the emergency action preparedness. That is a FERC requirement. You have to do it every 5 years on the dam. So it was actually due, I believe, last winter, but with COVID, we pushed that off. And now ultimately has to be done. It's done. And then AR after action plan reports dated by December 31st of 2022. So we have this next year to get it.
So Jeremiah, we have to, in my understanding of talking to Kelsey Admix with FERC, we have to give them notification 90 days prior to the exercise. And then they also request that we give them like 2 or 3 dates, and so that they can put it into their schedule with FERC, because one of them will be here for the exercise.
Yep, they need to have advanced plan dates. So we need to pick some dates, I would say 4 to 6 months out, or if we even want to go later. I mean, if it's ideal to do this November, December of next year, we can plan that far out, but we can give them a couple weekend dates, probably with everybody that may be part of this functional, and see what works best for folks.
So
Next. That's too long out.
Just to throw this out there, so if you picked May 1st, 90 days notice would be January 31st. So if we wanted to, I would say summer is not a good idea, because folks are on vacation and just like fire crews are occupied, which means it takes a lot of the emergency response out. So if we did it in the spring, we'd have to decide very quickly, or we could just do it in the fall and have a little bit more time. So that helps. I feel like 90 days is hard to centralize.
Summer's bad for the sheriff's office, I can tell you.
We could do it in May then.
May would be good.
May
Sheriff's
7th?
office, I don't know about everybody else.
May 7th would be the first Saturday in May. Not your birthday?
Yes.
So that would be one of our dates, maybe give them a couple and then.
And then like. November's out.
Hunting season?
I'm not a hunter, so it doesn't matter to me.
Let's do May.
Okay,
We have two.
so can we do May 7th and May 14th? And then that would give them 2 dates?
Yeah, I think that would work.
And then just get it done and then we're done?
Yeah.
I like that, it gives you more time for the status report, so you're not scrambling at the end of the year.
Yeah.
We should go to it.
Jackie, are you gonna send those dates to Kelsey or?
I can send them to Kelsey.
Okay,
I'll send them tomorrow. Okay,
and if those dates work for Burger, as soon as we hear back, we can just get that on everyone's schedule now and start planning for it, and then be in contact after the first part of the year, Jackie, just to kick this functional off and start planning for what we want to do there.
okay. Okay. So do we have any follow-up then? Questions? Comments?
If there's anything else that folks think of, we'll be helping to get the EAP updated here. So, I believe everyone's got Vanessa's contact info or Jackie, and if not, we can use our contact info. Just if you see something, send us a response and we'll try and get the EAP updated. Ultimately, it's the county's document, how you guys are going to proceed in emergency there, so we want it useful for the county staff.
Yep, absolutely, feel free to send me thoughts, comments, or questions, just, you got my email, so.
And anybody who wants this year's EAP, let me know and I can email it to you. Well, they can look at it. Corrections won't be until next year.
I see, okay.
So,
Yep. I had printed out copies I was gonna bring everyone, but
but you're safe in your home.
I am safe.
Okay.
Well, thanks everyone again for understanding, especially you, Jackie. Thank you so much for helping facilitate. So hopefully it went okay and really great discussion. I appreciate everyone's participation.
All right. Thank you so much, Jeremiah.
Thanks, Vanessa. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Thanks for participating.